We're just two veterans that are connecting with other veterans in the community to talk about business and all things life.
Hi, I'm John from Scott & Parker. We sell beanies, scarves and socks.
G'day, I'm Steve from Voortrekka, Australia. We're redefining the duffel bag.
And if you want to share your own service history, we have a digital platform where we will record that for you.
If you're interested in buying any of our products or interested in coming on the podcast, look at the links below in the description.
It's great to have you on the show again, Steve, to kick off our episode 3 of Veterans Catch Up. So great to talk to you again.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks so much for making the time. Obviously, we're going to try and do this weekly. That's our intention. We might not hit that mark every week, but what we plan on trying to do is have a constant regular meetup where we're talking to each other or we're talking to other veterans. That's our plan, isn't it, John?
Depends on what people are interested in doing and what subjects they want us to cover. So it's always great to put your comments below. Tell us about what you want to hear about, because we love speaking to people. And even if you don't see yourself as a great podcast guest or whatever, come on, we definitely, this isn't natural for us. We new at this game, and we're just trying our best to see how we can do it.
Yeah, when John first asked me to do the digital interview, I said to him, "Why would you want to hear from me? What have I got that's special that you want to hear?" But your whole point to me, John, was that all the war heroes have had their stories told. What you're interested in is hearing those untold stories, trying to record that legacy, for our grandkids or, future generations. That was the whole point, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, no, really important, because even if you weren't in combat or have a hero story, you could have been in an ordnance unit, engineering unit, doesn't matter what you did. Every vet has a story, and it's recording your story for your family. So that's all it's about. And it's not about getting 300,000 views. So you can go and watch those podcasts, and there's all podcasts out there, and they're absolutely amazing to watch. But ours is just telling the everyday soldier's story. So what was it like? What was life about? And even if you didn't go on deployment or whatever, just how did you find basic training? What was the food like? How did you find marching? And so the simple things in that all other soldiers can relate to. So it's just trying to tell those type of stories.
Yeah, I found it was really important. When you actually invited me and I had to think about it, it wasn't an instantaneous, yes, I'll do this, John. I went away. I actually got up to the sheds. I think I said this on the last podcast, looking through, old photo albums and, bits of memorabilia that I have. And that was such a great little journey to go on, because I think sometimes as veterans, a lot of civilians don't understand what we did. They don't understand our sacrifices. They don't understand the hardships and the commitment that it takes, whether you served a month or whether you served, 35 years or more. What it is, it really defines us, and it makes up a different part of our DNA after service. And it was really cool to just go back and reflect on some of the things that I achieved, some of the, adventures that I've been on in service. And that's what I found was the greatest part. Like I said as well, a little bit emotional at times, John. It was, interesting to go back and revisit. I served for nearly 20 years, and it was quite a journey to go back and reflect on that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because, Steve, a lot of people, their children think they know their parents' story or their grandparents' story, but they actually don't know the story. And for instance, my grandfather fought in Southwest Africa against the Germans, and he always wanted to tell his story. And for some reason, at that time of my life, I just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
So when he wanted to speak about it, I used to laugh about it. And, here he's trying to tell a story again. And I really regret that now, because I should have listened and taken note in that.
Yeah.
Because now I realize how fascinating those stories were. And it's gone now. He passed many years ago, and I'll never know his story. I think that's the important part. Is just, and again, he wasn't any hero or whatever, but it's just to know what he went through and how he went through. I remember talking about they were in the desert and there was lack of water and how their tongues used to swell up in it. But that's all I remember. Nothing else about it.
And imagine if you had the technology that you have today to be able to capture that, how important that would have been to do, or you'd love to be able to do that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the great thing about nowadays is we can capture those stories without at low cost. And that's why we can bring it and do it for people without, a huge cost burden of that. It's just the matter of the time and the recording in it and trying to get that across.
So one big part about what you do is that digital archiving, which I participated in. You captured my story. Probably wasn't all my story, but it was definitely, a good part of it. And I really appreciate what you did there. But what's the purpose of this podcast? What are we actually trying to achieve here?
I think this is slightly different because this is trying to connect with other veterans and form a community where we can talk about all the different support services for veterans and try and share that so veterans get a better understanding of where they can get support or, if they need support. The other important part is most veterans come out of the military and the biggest percentage go into their own in business because you didn't get the chance to go into corporate at a young age. So you're not really going to be able to leave the military at 40 or 50 and get back into corporate. It's, that avenue is probably closed unless you have really good contacts. So most vets will get into their own business. And so this is about talking about all those issues of how we can support those veterans talking about their businesses or promoting their businesses and just sharing their stories. So it's, if you have a vet business that you want to talk about, and if we create this community where we're sharing all these stories, other vets we can all support each other in growing those businesses.
Yeah, because we're like-minded people. That's the main point of this. You and I both connected because we're both veterans, both like-minded people in small business. And we said, well, wait a second, we've got an opportunity here to help each other, work together, over the last couple of weeks that we've met. And we have been talking to each other, haven't we, John? Where, we're sharing ideas, supporting each other, maybe, when we're having some hard days, celebrating some of the successes. That's what we want to do. That's the purpose of this podcast, is to let's increase our community. Let's be there for each other. Let's explore each other's businesses. And the whole purpose of this podcast here today is really to help promote your business as well. We have, John's worked really hard over the last, how many years have you been doing the podcasting for?
We've been doing podcasts for nearly 6 years now. So we started a business podcast. And then we also started doing people's life stories. Because I think that's a very important part. You need to tell your story how you want to tell your story, not how other people perceive your story to be. And so I tried to capture some of those types of stories. And then by accident, we ended up doing the military podcast, which is historic military interviews. And that's just grown. There's more and more people finding it. And it seems to resonate really well. And I think just adding to that is you and I would not have connected in any other way.
Yes.
If we hadn't have had this veteran connection.
Yeah, both veterans.
Yeah. And just that contact and connection.
And that's what I wanted to promote for people, is that what John's actually been able to build up is close to, there's probably combined nearly 10,000 people that are following historic military interviews, the channels, combined through different social networks and also, the website, YouTube, Spotify, TikTok. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to push it out there, because what we can do for you as a veteran that comes onto this podcast, we talk about your business, we give it a massive plug, and potentially, you have this audience now of, up to 10,000 people, hopefully hundreds of thousands after we, become household names, John. But, that's the whole thing, is it's veterans helping veterans, supporting each other. One thing that John, really good at, we did sort of a bit of a pre-chat before this podcast, the reason why that veteran piece is really important and why we need to push that is because veterans trust each other. We know that we appreciate good gear that works, or, items that, of a good quality. We also, respect each other's values of, integrity and those kind of, really important features for any business, where you're going to get a good service from one of us, and that's what we're trying to promote as well, is that us veterans being connected, means that the kind of product or service that you're going to engage in, it's probably going to be pretty good and it's going to be worth your while. So that's the other really cool piece to this. If we build this community up, we're supporting each other.
Yeah, I think that's important. All those followers are veterans.
Yeah.
That's not just, arbitrary people in the street in it. So if you want to connect with other veterans, then come and talk to us. And we're happy to share your story and get it out there, because that's really important. It's just building that community and trust and engagement and that. Steve, do you want to just give us a reminder of your service as a veteran, just so people understand what you did?
Yeah, so it was early 2000s, 2002, joined the Army as an officer, so went through Duntroon and, had multiple postings. Most of my career, I was in first line units, so I was in, my first posting was 5-7 RAR. As a workshop commander, had multiple postings in those type units. So, mechanized units. I started creating a bit of a niche for myself, which I probably shouldn't have. It wasn't the normal flow. I should have gone out to all these different kinds of units, the CISBs and the FSBs. But yeah, I stayed in first line units mainly. So, 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment, Queensland Mounted Infantry, 1st Armoured Regiment, 2 Cav. So a lot of armoured units was where my sort of career was at. 3 Recovery Company was another one that I served at. As a 2IC, and then I did a few stints at, in training schools and things like that. So that was pretty much my career, and I absolutely loved it. I got qualified on a lot of different vehicles and weapon systems. So I wasn't the average Ramey guy. I sort of got in amongst it, which was great, because what it did was it helped me understand the tactical side of things so that I could employ the logistics, in a very tactical, with a tactical mindset, making sure that, when the enemy's trying to target target us, they're trying to look for me. They're trying to blow up, our fuel carriers and, target our weapon caches and things like that. So it was a fantastic, you really enjoyed my career and really enjoyed that opportunity that, the Army gave me. So what about you, John?
Yeah, Steve, mine's a bit different because I'm ex-South African, and in our day, we were conscripted. So we were conscripted for 2 years. And then each subsequent year, we used to have to do what we called a military camp.
Yep.
So it was 1 month, 3 months, 1 month, 3 months for 8 years. So that was the sort of format. I was in a armored reconnaissance unit, 1 special service battalion. At that stage, we had a war going on in Angola. So it was the Angola Bush War. So I was quite involved in that. And
deployed.
Yeah. So that was our experience, and our experience was quite different because we used to go out on deployment for like 3 months at a time into the bush without even coming back to your base camp.
And when you did come back, like say you were deployed for 3 months, did you get any time off when you came back? If you were gone for 3 months, did they give you a week off or a month off or anything like that, or was it just...
No. We used to we used to say go to the operational area, which was in southwest, the northern part of Southwest Africa.
Yeah. And
so we used to go there, and we were at 10 Armored Squadron. So that's where our home base was.
Yeah.
So from there, we used to, depending on what you were doing and so we used to go on deployment into Angola. So if there was a operation into Angola, you could go on that for 3 months or come back. Or we would go on patrol the southern part of Angola. So you would also go up there for 2-3 months.
Yeah.
And then you'll get convoys coming up with food and ammunition and fuel to replenish you from that. Or you could, while you're in base, you could be doing just patrols. We used to, some of the school children in the little town, we were in Ochakati, and they used to go to school 20, 30 k's down the road. So you used to escort the school children down to school and back. So that's when we were in base, we used to be doing those. And
that was an operational task,
or escorting convoys down to some of the bases and that. So you could be doing that. Or you could be doing what we used to call the electricity lines. You have to patrol these electricity lines. Absolutely terrible task, because it was the most boring thing. You get a task, go from pole 15 to pole 150 or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And you weren't allowed to drive on the track because they used to landmine the track. They used to go through the bush, and then you used to get there, sleep the night, just in the bush somewhere. And then the next day drive back again.
Yeah.
And the next day drive. It's just driving back and forth.
Back and forth.
Yeah. So it was the most boring thing you could ever do. And then eventually you just get to have it. And then we used to just drive on the track.
Yeah.
Not to worry. So it's just hope there are no landmines or whatever. So.
Were you a driver, a commander, a gunner? What was your role in the armored vehicle?
I trained as a gunner.
Yeah.
But when we went up on deployment, our crew commander, he was sick. And so I took over as a crew commander role. So I did most of the time as crew commander.
And were you up against another armored adversary? Like, were they in armored vehicles, the enemy at all, or?
Yeah, at our time, there were probably about 50,000 Cubans in Angola fighting against us. And they had some big armored regiments.
Yeah.
So T-56s, T-62s, those type of tanks and that.
Yeah.
There were about 6,000 Russian advisors in that. So we used to come up against MiG-19s, MiG-21s. And in some of the operations, we were pretty close. There would be like 2 minutes flying time from where the MiGs used to take off to be above us. And they had, in those days, SAM 7, SAM 8, SAM 9s, surface-to-air missiles and that. So because our guys, Mirages and Impalas couldn't come in. As soon as the MiGs took off, then our guys could come in because they couldn't differentiate. In those days, they couldn't differentiate between planes.
Yeah. So as soon as there was a ground, like a surface-to-air missile threat, your guys were grounded pretty much.
Yeah. And as soon as the MiGs were in the air, we were like just immediately camouflaged. And, because they used to be above us so fast, And looking for us. You could see they were looking for us.
But can you also cover off on the armored vehicles that you use? Because when I first met you and we spoke about that, it was so cool to actually go and research and look at those vehicles. So there was sort of three I think, main vehicles that you guys operated with. Can you cover those off quickly?
Yeah, in our day, we started in the Panhard armored car. So it's a French-made car, which we modified in that. So it had a 90mm cannon on, and it used to also have 60mm mortars. So there were two types.
Wow.
Each troop was made out of 4 cars. So you normally had 2 90s and 2 60mm vehicles. Because especially in thick bush, it's not always easy to shoot direct. So the mortars are more effective.
And was that working in pairs? Were they working in pairs, or were they working as a composition? Like one was obviously a indirect capability, one was a direct capability? No,
we were working in a troop was 4 vehicles.
Yeah.
So it had your officer, he was in one vehicle.
Yeah.
And then you had a troop sergeant, and then you had 2 other vehicles. So we always worked in 4s.
Yes.
And then we worked in squadrons. So a squadron, there was normally about 28 vehicles in a squadron. And sometimes you'd have a squadron of 28 vehicles. And then, so it was about 7 troops. And then you would have your commanding officer, who is normally probably the rank of major, or there might be a colonel, they might have their command vehicles with them. And the whole idea of it was to maneuver continually. So because if you stopped, the guys would pick you up pretty fast.
Yes, yeah.
And nail you quite quickly. And then we also had Ratels, which had the same turret configuration, so also 90mm. Those were mainly 90mm. And as the war progressed, they then eventually stopped the armored vehicles going on deployment into Angola. They use them more for patrols and northern parts.
Convoy escort.
Yeah, that type of thing, and that because it's good. But the Ratels were a 6-wheel variant, highly maneuverable, a lot faster. They used to have big diesel engines. The Panhard had a 2.8-litre Chev engine.
Right, yeah.
It used to maneuver pretty fast. And if your crews knew what they were doing, we could come against tanks if they were T-56s or T-62s in it. And if you're really well trained, you could sort of manage it. But the Ratels were actually better. And then later on, around the 86, 87, then we started to bring in the tank squadrons. The tank squadrons were before that just kept in reserve.
Yes.
But in the later part of the war, the tank squadrons came in to try and deal with the tanks and that. Because otherwise
they were Centurions, is that right?
Yeah.
But based on the Centurion,
Yeah, they're based on the Centurion with we had made some modifications and that to them. So
we
called them the Olifant tanks.
Yes.
And then at that time, around 89, 90, they brought out what they called like a Roy Cut, which was a six-wheel, really nice vehicle.
Yeah, right.
But I don't think that was ever deployed.
Okay.
That was a really nice vehicle. That had a 105 mil. You must remember in Africa, you're dealing in like very soft sand, very thick bush. So you're trying to move the whole time.
Yeah.
And the enemy was pretty sophisticated by that time already, though, you know, if you fired at them, by the time your artillery fired their third round, that's in like within 2 minutes, you know, we used to have 140 self-propelled 155s, so 140 mil towed artillery. By the time they fired their third round, you already had incoming on your positions. So the guys could pick you up pretty fast.
Yeah.
So it was like, you used to fire and move, you know.
Fire and move, that's it.
Because the guys knew where you were.
So in comparison, the kind of vehicles that I worked in were the M113A1, which was the earlier version, sort of more the Vietnam version of the APC, track vehicle. And then we turned those into the M113AS4s, which were, extended. They essentially cut them in half and extended them, still in service at the moment, although, transitioning, finally with the Land 400 project and the new vehicle fleet that's coming in. But that was sort of the first vehicle that I was a crew commander on, with the no longer the 30 mil. They took those out and just had the single 50 cal, in the turret, and then they went to the electronic turret, which was, a big upgrade. And then I got qualified on the ASLAV, which is our 8-wheeled, reconnaissance vehicle. I wasn't, turret qualified with the 25 mil Bushmaster chain gun, and had coax as well and a flex mounted 7.62. But I was on the Ramey variants, with the big crane on the on the back for pack lifts. Also the recovery variant, with the winches, and also, medical variants, PCs, which is the personnel carrier variant. So, it was such a great platform, to obviously deploy with and to use when I was in Iraq. And then when I came back, ended up, commanding a lot of Bushmasters as well, as they transitioned to some of our armoured protected mobility assets within, some of the logistics squadrons. So, such a cool, business to be in, armoured vehicles, isn't it? It's
it's like a boy's dream, man.
Well,
especially as a gunner, being a gunner, it's just like you can't, as a boy, your dream is just to be.
Yeah. I remember going through my training, and one of the guys, one of the instructors I had at one point, he's because you do a lot of training. Obviously, you sort of train as a basic infantry soldier. Really, that's how everyone in the military always sort of starts off. Pack on your back, rifle in your hand, and boots on your feet, and you just go walking, and fight that way. He sort of said to me, would you rather be walking or would you rather be, rolling in a vehicle? I soon went, I know what I want.
But Steve, in terms of, did you carry troops in the back of your vehicles? Or was it...
Sometimes, yeah, just
so
depending.
They had space to carry vehicle.
The M113s do. Yeah, M113s. You obviously got. Again, you have different platforms for the maintenance side of it. You have a recovery variant. You have a fitters track, what they call. Which is the mechanic sort of one with a crane on it. But yeah, usually, even when I was in Iraq in my ASLAB with the fitters track variant, which is. With the ASLAB F, where you have the crane on it, I'd still have a third person, so someone in the back, so driver, commander, someone in the back, and what they did was they sort of provided you situational awareness to your rear, out of one of the rear hatches. But a crew normally in an ASLAV, you've got your gunner, you've got your commander, and then you've got your driver. Obviously, in a tank, the Abrams tank. What you have is also a loader. So you've got a 4-man crew. So.
And Steve, when you were on deployment, did you have infantry operating with you, or did you just
Yeah.
operate as an armored unit?
No, you had infantry as well, but mounted infantry a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So you'd have composition squadrons where you'd have, some reconnaissance variants, the ASLAV variants, and you'd have Bushmasters as well with your mounted infantry. And like I said in one of the previous podcasts, the tactics changed a lot from Iraq to Afghanistan, where, Afghanistan, we sort of turned into being a really sort of slow moving force because of the IED threat. Where the engineers and infantry were doing a lot of, foot-based clearance before the vehicles could actually, come in and roll through that same ground terrain, or they'd be in overwatch positions, the armored vehicles, providing support to the infantry as they patrolled. So, yeah, different roles. And I mean, that's the cool thing about armored vehicles is their versatility, improves your communications, your load carrying, your ability to reach out and, do your job is, hugely increased by that capability. So, yeah, it's exciting. But, yeah, definitely liked being in the vehicle rather than walking beside the vehicle.
No, 100%. You definitely don't walk here.
No,
Because I
yeah.
used to look at our infantry guys, they used to walk these patrols. So they got this full kit, like a week and a half supply of kit.
Yeah.
And they'd be walking 20 Ks a day.
Yeah.
And then hot and humid. And then I'd run out of water. When we were on patrol and we sort of got short of water, we say, okay, well, where's the closest watering place? And we used to head down there and have a swim and load up with water. It was just like have a barbecue underneath the tree, and it was just a good laugh.
Yeah.
And the poor infantry guys, that would be like half a litre of water a day or a litre of water a day or stuff.
Yeah.
It's just really tough stuff, So,
but I thought that was really good today, just to try and, I guess, talk about each other's history and our backgrounds a little bit, for our audience, just to understand a little bit more about who we are as veterans and connect with us. It's funny. I've seen some of the comments on some of the other stuff that I've from my interviews, and people are like, "Oh, he's the super pogue," or as if you trust a Ramey officer in an armored vehicle. Yeah, okay. It's all. I'm sure some of it's in good spirits, some of it's whatever. It's no issue to me. We've all done some amazing things in service. Different roles, different functions. We've been speaking to other people that we want to get to come and tell their story, from different services, Air Force, Navy. We obviously have a bit of an Army background, but, we want to hear all your stories. It's not just about guys that, were in combat or guys that, were in armored vehicles. We're so keen to talk to anyone out there that can tell their stories or share their business. Isn't that right?
No, definitely. I would also like to get some of the ladies on the show too.
Absolutely.
Because that gives us a completely different perspective on how they've felt and the things that they encountered in that. So that would be really good for us too.
Yeah. And we have some, we do actually have some families coming on the show in later episodes where we will be speaking to the wives, and the real warriors in the military family, the ones that, left at home that don't understand what the hell's going on half the time, they're left in the dark wondering, if they'll ever see their loved one again. So, really important to tell their stories and, explore, where they're at, the things that they're doing these days. That's going to be really important for us as well. So John, you go.
No, I was just going to say, because that's, when you're involved in all this, you're off and everything's happening and you're busy every day and you're doing your thing. But the people left at home don't know, whether it's mothers or girlfriends or whatever. And that was another big part of ours, we used to call them Dear John letters. Because when you leave, girlfriends, you say, "Oh, we're going to wait for you, and don't worry, it's all good," and that. And then slowly, each guy used to start getting we used to always call them a Dear John letter. It's like, haven't seen you for a while, and I think it's best if we just leave it till you get back in that. And the guys used to be devastated, but that was part of life, So.
Pretty sure when I first joined, I got a Dear John letter. So yeah, no. that's all part of growing up as well, and I'm sure that the right relationships, I definitely know that, my poor wife had a 1-year-old when I deployed, the second time, and, had to put up with all of that worry. I think we were separated for about 13 months in total from that period. So, I got to really connect with my daughter again when she was already another year older, which is, sad, but that's part of service. And there's a lot of people that have gone through a lot more hardship than that. And we're here to talk about those parts of your journey as well, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
So, John, can you tell us a little bit about also what you're doing in business, what you're doing in, I know specifically e-commerce, but for the viewers, to be able to tell them exactly what you represent on, the outside of this podcast?
We run a couple of things. So we do some software type business into the automotive space, so that we run with that, and running a support desk for the Asia Pacific region. And then also we started this e-com brand, selling beanies, scarves, headbands, socks. They're all made out of Finland, because Finland have been making these products for hundreds of years. So they really have the technical skills and that to make very good quality that you can rely on. Because when you're in such cold conditions, you can't have something that it's not going to work properly. So we enjoy selling those products, and we're based out of Melbourne, and so it's a fantastic place to be, and we really enjoy being here.
And how long have you been on this e-com journey specifically?
No, really short. So we started September last year.
Yeah.
And so it's been a really short space of time. But we're really having a lot of fun. The business is growing. We're getting good feedback from our products, and that's it's wonderful to be in the space.
What I love is that yesterday I got my first package from Scott & Parker, and I'm looking forward to trying out all of the gear. We're actually going to do some more content creation for John, for Scott & Parker, from different perspectives and that kind of thing, getting some user-generated content. So I can't wait to work and help you out with that, John. And that's a part of this whole journey as well, isn't it? We've got two people that have just connected. We're working together on this podcast, but, also helping each other a little bit in our e-commerce side of things, which is, I think, fantastic, because what I've found in e-commerce is it's actually a bit lonely at times, because, you're beavering away, you're trying to get all these different things achieved, and you're not in that constant connection with people. It's not like an office space or, a platoon environment where you're seeing people every day and being able to, just have that camaraderie. So that's what I think is a great thing about this podcast, is that we're building a community where we can have that camaraderie, where we can, talk to each other, help each other. I had yesterday someone reach out to me where they just needed some mentoring, coaching, and support. And I spent, about an hour yesterday helping them take that next step that they needed to on their journey for a new startup for e-commerce. So that's what I love about this. I love that we've connected. I get to help you. You've definitely been helping me, on my journey. So it's really exciting. It's an exciting time. And I'm glad that I've met, more people through this e-com journey.
And Steve, can you tell us about your bag?
Yeah.
About how you got that idea and developed it especially from your military background, because that's interesting.
So what I'm doing, I'm actually supporting my wife launch a brand called Voortrekka Australia. And the idea is to help my wife, transition from 28 years of being a nurse, into, a business that is ours, working for ourselves. I think there's a lot of veterans that will relate to that. Service is fantastic, but it's also nice to be your own boss, and it's nice to maybe do something on your own terms. I've always been a service person. If I hadn't have been, in the army, I would have been a policeman. If I hadn't have been a policeman, I would have been a paramedic. I was always destined for that service life. But I'm loving this idea of working for ourselves, helping build our own, brand, using all of those skills that I had in the military to help my wife, launch Voortrekka Australia. But yeah, we've really designed something within an area that we love, which is camping. And what's so cool is that beanies at Scott & Parker and camping bags at Voortrekka Australia, they nest pretty well together. You know, we're not talking about, you know, toothbrushes and tow bars or something like that. You know, so that's exciting for us because we can collaborate a bit in both our businesses. But yeah, a camping bag, we've redefined the duffle. Everyone hates a bag where you got one big cavernous space and you're looking for that one pair of socks and you've got to flip everything just to be able to pull out, you know, that one item that you need. So we've got a very organized, structured duffel bag that has certain dividers and unique shoe storage and a stay-up lid technology. It makes camping so much easier. That's what we're trying to solve. So one cool thing about when you do come up with an idea, it really should relate to trying to solve a pain point, you know, and your pain point is getting quality products on people's heads and on people's feet. That's what Scott and Parker's about, isn't it?
No, definitely, because once you get out in the cold, if you don't have the right gear, you're going to start feeling the cold, because you lose a huge amount of warmth through either your head or your feet.
Yeah.
So if you've got those covered, you can be pretty comfortable and you can have a pretty good time. But as soon as you start feeling cold, then you're going to it just becomes totally unpleasant. You know, and you just don't want to be doing it.
I can promise you that nearly every listener is going to relate to this if they served in the military. But guess what? Our socks were pretty average. You know, the socks that we had, they used to wear out so quickly. You know, like everyone will know exactly what I'm talking about. The Green Army socks, the heels would rub away within weeks, or they'd shrink. I know that they changed the material makeup of it at one point, and as soon as you put it through a dryer, you know, they shrank. So we had probably, you know, no offense to the people out there that procured the socks, but they're very average. What's the difference between your socks? Your socks have been sold in the millions, haven't they, to, you know, different militaries? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, we have two levels of military socks.
Yeah.
So we have a combat sock. So we sold, well, not us personally, unfortunately, but the company we represent.
Go with it, John. Go with it.
Yeah. So they sold about 1 million to the Finnish military, and I've just now done a deal for the Danish military to do another 1 million.
Yeah.
And
so it's quality socks.
Yes. And they've been used by the Belgian Marines and whatever. So it's a technical type sock, so it's multi-layer and it's made from different types of materials, including wool. So that's what gives us the robustness and the durability and that ability. So it has all those characteristics. So different parts of the sock are made from different materials, depending on where you need it to be breathing and where it needs to be wearing. Different support and aspect of that. And then we have a much thicker sock, which is a Arctic tactical sock, and that's for if you're going to -30 or -40 type things, also for the military, but they can be used for tradies or anywhere, farmers or anyone working outdoors who needs a good quality sock. So those
or my wife, you know, anytime that it's below 20 degrees, you know.
Luckily in Australia here, we don't get that cold. So
well, I should still say it's cold, especially when we go camping. So I can't wait to get her to try the Arctic socks.
But especially if you're going into the high country or if you're going into New Zealand in the mountains or whatever, and you want quality gear. That's an important part. Yeah. So any outdoor snow sport. A lot of guys go into Europe, and what we underestimate is the ability to have the right, because, you know, originally being a South African, we moved to Finland and we lived in Helsinki for 6-7 years.
Okay.
And when we moved there, the South African clothing definitely has no, and that's what I realized, and that's what we're trying to bring value here.
Yeah.
The Southern Hemisphere countries, the clothing just doesn't have the durability and the right quality to withstand that type of cold.
And the technology, because there's a technology piece to it, isn't there? Yeah.
So if you're just getting, and you don't realize the value of it. So when we got to Finland, we had beanies. They were like these cheap hand crocheted beanies that you get off Temu or whatever, and some average sort of socks. And you're going out in the cold in it, and it was just. We soon learned that no, all that stuff got turfed, and we had to go get good quality stuff. And that's what we're trying to offer, is that high quality. So we're probably not for everyone. We don't provide the market. You might still want to get a $20 beanie off Amazon or somewhere, whatever. That's fine. There's no problem with that. But if you're into outdoor sports and you're doing trail running, or you're doing cycling in really cold conditions, or you're going to do trekking or mountain climbing or whatever, then we can probably provide some equipment for you. So.
That's the difference with your beanies as well. You actually have different beanies for different purposes. It's not just a beanie suits everything. There's a little bit of, again, technology that goes into the way different beanies serve you in different environments or different tasks that you're doing. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've got probably about 30 styles of beanies, including beanies for children. So we've got a huge range of beanies, from chunky, really thick type beanies, a lot of wool used in them, to short type beanies for if you're outdoors and you're working. So we got sailor beanies and fisherman beanies and those type of things. So if you're doing sport or cycling or sailing or whatever, that's a completely different range. And then you got your mid-range beanie, and then we got fine knit beanies and that, which are more, you want something to keep you warm, but you're going to be outdoors and you're going to be indoors and that, and it's like a styling option. So we offer different types of things.
And the great thing with a lot of your products, they're all sustainable. Tell us more about the way that they're made, or what they're made by.
Yeah, they're all ethically produced, sustainably produced. They're all milsing free. So it's all, most of them are 100% merino wool. Except once you get into the socks, technical aspects of the socks net, you can't just go 100% merino wool, because they'll wear out pretty fast.
Yeah,
so that comes into the technical layers and the blend of different types of products and that. And they won some innovation awards, the design of their socks, to make it, that gives it that ability to perform in that. So again, it's coming back. There are other socks out there, but we're not trying to compete in that sort of range. And that's not smart for us.
You're not selling a Temu beanie made of polyester or whatever. These are really well thought out, well designed products. And you're based in Melbourne. You're an Australian-owned, brand company that's selling this gear. And what we want to do is obviously connect with people in this veteran community as well, and collaborate, make sure that that there's some really good quality beanies and socks out there.
I think that's the whole point about this podcast, is where can we help you? If you want us to answer questions, or you just want to talk to us, reach out. It doesn't always have to be on the podcast. We're happy to chat and help wherever we can.
Yeah, no, that's a good segue. I mean, encouraging what we want to get out of this. We want to work with people. We want to, talk to people. If you've got questions, if you want us to even, help you with your journey, that's something that we can do. The main purpose of the podcast is obviously, get you on. Let's promote your business. Let's promote what you're doing. Let's, also, acknowledge your service, acknowledge, what you did in your time, wearing a uniform, and let's connect. It's one of the biggest things that we want to do, is try and build a community where we can support each other, help each other. With you being at Scott and Park and myself at Voortrekka Australia, we're more than just veterans. We're trying to start up our own businesses. We're learning all about, it's hilarious. We keep joking about it, 60-year-old and, 40-year-old trying to learn how to TikTok. We're not quite doing it where we're dancing or anything like that. We're more just trying to, get ourselves out there. But it's quite a scary journey as well, even like this, it's putting yourself out there, exposing yourself to the wider community. But that's how you grow your business. So that's what we're going to encourage you to do.
And that's the scary part, because suddenly you're out there doing stuff you never dreamt you'd be doing. Stuff. No. I know 5 years ago, I never thought I'd be up in the camera, talking and doing TikTok videos and Instagram videos and that. It wasn't my thing, but
What have you got coming up then? What's some of the stuff that you're working on in your business at the minute, just so that we can obviously, let everyone else know we don't have this all sorted yet. We're just learning as well.
So we're just getting all our ranges ready for winter now. So we've just brought in a new ski sock. We've just launched that. So fantastic looking sock. As we say, we don't do fashion, but we do gear that
quality gear,
sustainable and lasts in that.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff looks pretty good anyway. So, so some pretty good colors. We're launching some new colors in terms of the top end range of beanies, some dark reds, not really good looking. So we'll start sharing some of those things.
Yeah.
So it just keeps expanding. We're going to launch a range of caps towards the end part of winter, so coming into spring. So there's a lot on the go. It's just a matter of trying to get it all done and get out there and talk about it, and share some of the stuff. And make some TikTok videos, which I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but it's good fun anyway. So.
No, excellent.
And yourself, Steve?
We launched our brand, to the wider world Easter Friday, and what we went with a strategy where we wanted to validate the brand and validate that this bag was something that people wanted, and it's been taken up so well, been well received by, a community of people I'd never met, through TikToks and Instagram and, those kind of places where we've been able to show what our product is at Voortrekka Australia. But the idea was to validate it and see if there was a market for what we've done. We've designed or redefined this duffel bag. It's not like anything you've seen before. There is no bag that competes with it. It really solves a lot of problems that you have when you're camping with organising your gear, being able to access your gear really easily in a smart way. So we did that. We had a goal where we wanted to try and validate, up to 50 sales before we, really thought that we could go ahead with the order. Realistically, though, that was the wrong calculation. We all make mistakes, but it was validated after 20 sales, really. So within the first 48 hours, we reached 20 bags sold. We're at 42 bags sold now. So we pushed the go button. We ordered the 100 bags. We had an MOQ of 100 bags. So they're on the way now. And what I've done is I've just been able to pass on some really great savings to the early adopters in this pre-sale strategy, where I've been trying to do it organically, and that's something that I've had to learn to do. I didn't have TikTok 4 weeks ago. I didn't have Instagram 4 weeks ago. Didn't have a podcast 4 weeks ago. And, organically we were able to sell, those bags, and we're continuing to sell them every day. It's just great. We now can push forward with confidence that there is a market. We had some great people within different communities on YouTube and, Facebook and Instagram promote it and get it out there. A lot of people have taken us up on the offer, and, we hope to have those bags here by early August in the hands of all these new customers so that they can start helping us promote it that next level again. So really exciting journey that we're on at the minute. If you want to check it out, it's, on a lot of the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's called Voortrekka Australia. It's a unique duffel bag that solves a lot of your camping problems. Just like Scott and Parker, solves a lot of those issues with having good quality gear, like beanies and socks and scarves and head wraps and things like that. We're just trying to make sure that we're putting a good product out there, both of us. So, please have a look, check it out. But that's our chance to talk about our businesses. But what we want to do is we want to talk about your businesses. So, reach out to us, get in touch with us so that we can help promote you. If you're a veteran that's interested in coming to speak to us on our podcast or wants to do a digital archiving, just get in touch with the details below.
Thanks very much. And we'll speak to you again next week.
Thanks, John. Talk to you soon.